Bienvenue tous, welcome to Reporters here on France 24, France 24 in English. With me is Mehdi Meddeb, just back from Mauritania. Mauritania, one of these places that's been out of bounds to tourists of any nationality because of the threat of jihadist extremism. But Mehdi, now, there's been a change.
Tout à fait.
Absolutely. Over the past few months, tourists have been allowed back into the zone. The entire Sahel region, including Mauritania, had been blacklisted for 6 long years. Tourism basically collapsed due to these terrorist attacks. But the president of Mauritania has managed to get the situation under control and to allow tourists back in. They can now go enjoy these breathtaking landscapes.
Okay, but there are some complications, as we will see in Mehdi Meddeb's film, Mauritania, back in business.
Atar Airport in the middle of the desert. After a 10-year hiatus, commercial flights are landing here once again. On board, 150 visitors from Europe are already taking their first snaps of the trip. They're greeted by a welcome committee, the same one every week.
Did you have a good flight?
The governor greets the visitors in person. For some, it's the first time, while others are returning.
It's been a while?
Yes, 8 years.
8 years. Very happy to see you again. Thank you, thank you.
The Mauritanian authorities are delighted to see the tourists return, attracted by the chance to see a region that was, until recently, inaccessible.
Yes, it's the first time I've been here.
You are with Stéphane group.
The trek is discreetly monitored by authorities. They want to avoid any incident. Memories of a decade-long crisis still linger. The region has a recent bloody past. In 2007, 4 French tourists were killed, prompting Paris and much of the West to advise against all but essential travel to Mauritania. That meant tour operators were no longer insured to work in this part of the Sahara. Tourism collapsed overnight, but in the 8 years that followed, there wasn't a single attack in Mauritania. A security perimeter was established around Chinguetti and YVAN. The trip starts here, with dunes as far as the eye can see. Philippe has a long-running interest in the Sahara Desert, and coming here has been a dream of his for years.
It's sometimes worth ignoring advice. To see such beautiful landscapes, well, sometimes it just makes us forget all the dangers.
It's the first night in the desert for these Western tourists. The camel herders gear up for the trek, and the visitors stock up on carbs ahead of a long day's hiking. For most, it's the first time in this vast desert, and none of them feel threatened.
My friends and family were worried because they know about the jihadist groups that have existed in the Sahara over the last decade. But I had a look at the Belgian government website, and it said the area of Mauritania we're in now was safe. My insurance company says there's no problem and that I'm totally covered.
A wondrous sea of sand is how the Mauritanian organizers want the tourists to remember the Sahara. To satisfy the Westerners' search for wilderness, there's no expense spared. Each party has 1 camel per traveler to carry their gear. Once the country was deemed safe enough, the logistics were up and running in a matter of weeks, leaving the trekkers with little to worry about besides contemplating the Sahara.
It's wonderful, splendid landscapes. It is really very pleasant.
They're about to walk 200 kilometers in 15 days. With not a tree in sight, at noon, the party's looking for cover from the sun and wind. For some, like YVAN, the reopening of the Mauritanian Sahara is an opportunity.
The most difficult thing is to reassure clients about what's happening in Mauritania. So right now, we consider that there is no problem in sending young French people in the context of our tours here.
Tourists and professionals both want the same thing, to be able to travel safely in eastern Mauritania. But it's no easy feat. The zone under surveillance is twice the size of France. Every day, 3 military planes fly over the region on the lookout for any suspicious group. The army upgraded its equipment in 2011, hoping to make the jihadist attacks of the 2000s a thing of the past. Their infrared cameras can identify men and vehicles, allowing them to immediately alert teams on the ground. Here, the rapid intervention brigades are constantly braced for action. With this exercise, the army wants to show us that they're firmly in control.
Mauritania has adopted a broad strategy: political, military, judicial, and social. There have been education campaigns aimed at religious authorities. There have been acts of repentance by jihadists. And there has been a reorganization of the army. Since 2010, there has not been a single attack on the national territory.
Mauritania has indeed come a long way. Its army was a shambles just 10 years ago. Since then, the military has invested, recruited, and equipped itself. In 2005, it was here, on Chinguetti base, on the Malian border, that the military was first defeated. 15 of their men were killed by Al-Qaeda. But today, Nouakchott has gained the upper hand over the terrorists. YVAN is right next to the Red Zone. A former commercial hub built in the 11th century, it is discreetly patrolled by security forces. But its eerily empty pathways are a far cry from the bustle of the 2000s, the golden years for tourism.
We're just walking by the mosque.
The Mosque of Chinguetti, an architectural gem of the region, is open to visitors. Like YVAN, this town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The tourists' arrival means many locals are back in business. Over the past 4 months, flights from France have resumed and 1,000 people have seen Chinguetti, which is considered the 7th holy town of Islam.
Going to Chinguetti is like going to Timbuktu, Gao, Agadez, Kairouan. These are important cities of Islam. This is an important moment.
Behind these doors, Chinguetti's heritage has been for a long time out of the Western public's reach. This man is one of the last guardians of these Islamic manuscripts.
Unfortunately, it's lost its cover. We don't know how old it is.
A wealth of knowledge, scientific, judicial, and religious, lies within these cardboard boxes. This heritage, under threat, has only survived thanks to this man's courage.
The famous UNESCO promised us funds, but promises only bind those who listen to them. It's a shame. This is the oldest Quran in Western Africa.
UNESCO's unkept promises regarding the heritage anger him. Despite the tourists' return, he's worried about the region.
Like the candle that burns to provide light to others, when there was a mass exile, all the families left Chinguetti, except those who really cared. They stayed to look after this heritage no matter what. They need to be rewarded. If not, they'll become like the Taliban. They used to be wise, but they left the tablets. They took up rifles because they thought rifles had more to offer.
The battle is not over. Eastern Mauritania is still fragile. Once the provider of thousands of jobs, the tourism sector has had to start over from scratch. The desert nomads have been hit particularly hard by the departure of Westerners and the rise of terrorism. This former camel herder depended on tourists to make a living. Thousands like FADILI lost their jobs and are yet to benefit from the sector's regeneration. Nothing has changed for him since the tourists' return. To survive, he accepts any odd job.
We used to work with tourists, but when they leave, we go into town to look for new clients. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. And we return to the village to try to do some herding or agriculture. Unfortunately, there is not a lot of work.
Apart from tourism and mining, this remote region has very little source of revenue. Unless the economy is diversified, it will continue to rely on Western visitors' advice given by their embassies. For now, though, locals are enjoying the moment, the end of a tourist season that has opened Mauritania back up to the world.
It's been a while I haven't seen you, Sheikh Ali. It's a pleasure to see you here.
The location is great, and we have potential. The region is beautiful, and tourism reunites people. The sector went downhill for 10 years, but now it's back on its feet. It's been 10 years since we've had a moment like this.
This part of Mauritania has found some peace. But for how long, no one knows. For now, the desert's inhabitants will continue their timeless rituals, be it a tea, a prayer, or a song.
The sun sets over Mauritania, but tomorrow the sun rises again. And Mehdi, that's the good thing, isn't it? We're seeing lots of positives in your film, but still this issue of security is key. Tell us more about that.
The thing to note is that Mauritania's president really went all in to reform the military. As we can see behind us, there's the Air Force, but also these special intervention units that were assembled under his rule starting in 2011. They're very mobile units, well-equipped, well-paid and well-trained. The president invested tens of millions of dollars to really rebuild the Mauritanian army.
You showed us the towns that are now receiving tourists again, Chinguetti in particular, which is of great importance to Islam. How did it managed to survive over these years of threat?
Chinguetti managed to survive thanks to the solidarity of the Mauritanian people and also due to the fact that checkpoints were set up all around Mauritania. It's one of the most heavily surveilled countries in West Africa. For instance, there are 87 checkpoints between Nouakchott and the Malian border. So Mauritania really controls what's going on, as opposed to other countries in the region like Mali, Burkina Faso or Niger, where the military is almost at the mercy of terrorist groups. We've seen it with the recent attacks in Ouagadougou or near Niamey. So Mauritania is really a country that's got a firm grasp on security.
It's a fascinating place, and we saw some remarkable landscapes in your video. It's really breathtaking. And obviously tourism is a big thing for the local people. How much did they rely on that before? How much is this bringing back to them now?
They're really counting on it. Even the president is. In fact, it's the second pillar of his foreign policy towards the West, security and tourism. It's not anything new in the region. In Tunisia, President Ben Ali did the exact same thing to attract Westerners. In the case of Mauritania, we're not really talking mass tourism, rather backpackers and adventurers. So for now, only 1,500 people are expected to visit during this first tourist season, which is 10 times less than a decade ago. But it's a good first step. In fact, they're launching a new direct flight route between Marseille and Attar, which is a good sign.
It looks fantastic and a place really to go and discover. Fantastic. Mehdi, thank you very much for your fascinating film about Mauritania. Clearly things looking a lot more positive. To see us again, of course, look at our website, france24.com. Thank you once again, Mehdi, for your efforts and for your analysis. Great to see you. And do stay with us here on France 24.